What if I described to you a grand historic American city, a place that has been called the Valley of Paradise, a once bustling entertainment district that has birthed some of the most important figures in American culture, and was at one point the wealthiest city in the nation that housed a world-renowned resort? You'd probably think I was talking about a city like Los Angeles or Chicago or New York, except it's none of those places. In fact, I bet it's a city you've never heard of. I was describing Riverside, California. To anyone watching that is from Riverside or knows the area, they're probably laughing a little bit right now because its current reputation is definitely not that of a great American city. For reference, the creator of Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan, originally wanted the show to take place in Riverside because it's known as the meth capital of the world. However, Albuquerque gave them better tax incentives. But I assure you, all the stuff I described about Riverside is the truth. At the turn of the 20th century, Riverside was the wealthiest city in America. The Fox Theater in downtown used to hold grand movie premieres, and the Mission Inn Hotel used to be one of the go-to destination spots for notable travelers. Barry Bonds, one of the greatest baseball players ever, if not the greatest, is from Riverside. The city has also produced basketball royalty. Reggie and Cheryl Miller are from there, as well as Kawhi Leonard. Etta James, one of the most influential musicians, was a resident for most of her life until her death. She even made music in Riverside. I'm saying all this because today the city has become forgotten by the average American, and even many Californians. But without Riverside, Southern California would not be the economic and cultural powerhouse that it is today. It's not all doom and gloom, however. At the end of the video, I'm going to discuss how the city is on the rise again, and might even regain some of its relevancy. The city of Riverside originates from when John W. North created the Southern California Colony Association in 1870. However, like all places in America, it has a pre-colonial history that needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, native activity of the area isn't as well documented as it deserves to be. But the two largest groups in Riverside are the Cahuilla and Serrano people. The most ancestral activity can be found along the Santa Ana River and Mount Rubidoux. Their history takes a drastic shift in the late 1700s when Spanish explorer Juan Bautista de Anza passed through the region. He was the one who called it Valle de Paraíso, or Valley of Paradise. It led to the natives of the area to suffer through disease and to be relocated to the nearby Spanish missions. If you're in the Riverside area, I implore you to go to the Yahi Eki Regional Indian Museum to learn more about the native people of this region. By the late 1870s, three notable figures settled down in the area and led Riverside to boom in popularity. The first was John W. North, the man who founded the city. He was a prominent East Coast lawyer and politician. He was a staunch abolitionist and was one of the founding members of the old Republican Party. He helped Abraham Lincoln become the Republican presidential nominee and traveled across the country trying to promote integrated communities. He was the one that created Riverside with the intention of making it a diverse hub. This is best exemplified by the Pachapa camp that was established in 1908 by An Chang-ho, who is a Korean laborist. He created the family-based community to contrast the traditional bachelor-style Asian labor camp. Pachapa is considered the first ever Koreatown in the US. The next founding figure was Eliza Tibbets, who is someone I could make an entire movie about, but she is credited as the person who introduced the navel orange to the region and started the citrus industry that eventually made Riverside the wealthiest city in America. A large part of that was due to her unusual business practices, which was just treating her laborers with the respect they deserve. She was a spiritualist and abolitionist that rejected traditional racial and gender norms, and was a major player in the women's suffrage movement. She moved to Riverside because she wanted to help grow it as a cooperative-style commune. All this led her to creating a farm that essentially used a co-op business model. She gave her predominantly Chinese and Mexican employees great wages and taught them tools of the trade so they could run their own farms. She pooled her profits with other businesses to grow the local economy, which is how the city became so wealthy. There's so much more I can say about her, but I have to keep this video short. The next figure is Frank Augustus Miller, who you can kind of imagine as Riverside's own Walt Disney without the racism. And he's another figure that I could just go on and on about. He was the son of C.C. Miller, who was another abolitionist that came to Riverside as a surveyor. C.C. eventually opened up the Mission Inn as a simple boarding home. However, it was Frank who gave the Mission Inn its eclectic style. He leaned heavily into the Mission Revival look and invested a lot of money to make the hotel and Riverside a premier destination. He was also heavily invested in historical and artistic preservation. The Mission Inn housed a grand collection of artifacts. Mainly bells. The man had an affinity towards bells for some reason. He was also kind of strange. He would dress up as St. Augustus and give out free oranges at the train station to just random incoming guests. He also just built random places within the Mission Inn that did not stick with its style. So there's just like competing and clashing looks throughout the entire place. It's a pretty trippy area. There's also like long winding hallways and corridors, and he helped make a tunnel system under Riverside. He was truly one of the figures of all time. But because of that, the hotel also had many famous people as guests, notably many US presidents and world leaders. It was also a location of plenty of movie scenes. It had quite a bit of movie stars there. From John Wayne, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Jeff Goldblum, etc. Even Einstein visited and got bit by one of Frank's pet parrots. It was also once seen as a romantic getaway. Both Richard Nixon and Bette Davis had weddings there. Ronald and Nancy Reagan had their honeymoon there. It has definitely lost a lot of its former glory, but it's still an interesting and very beautiful place to visit if you're in the area. They also hold the Festival of Lights during the Christmas season, which is something that people from all over the world come to see. Outside of the Mission Inn, Frank was also one of Riverside's biggest supporters. He poured a lot of money into the local area and promoted it as one of the elite cities. His work led William Fox to open up the Fox Theater in downtown, which became a beacon for the entertainment industry. Hollywood used it specifically for test screenings for their larger movies. It was also the location for the very first public screening of Gone with the Wind, which is still the highest grossing movie ever, with inflation. Undoubtedly, these three figures helped Riverside become the powerhouse that it was. They promoted cooperative style living and industry. They were leaders with their own unique approach that never compromised on their beliefs of the good of all people. However, some unfortunate factors, mostly outside of the city's control, led to its downfall. The beginning of the decline started with most things in America, the Great Depression. Especially because it coincided with the local citrus industry being ravaged by pest and disease. Along with that, other places provided cheaper oranges to import, which hurt Riverside's stronghold on the fruit. The second generation of citrus capitalists that moved away from Tibbets' style of farming became discouraged and started selling their land. This ushered in an era of urban sprawl for the city, which erased its agricultural identity. It didn't help that Riverside wasn't able to pivot from the citrus industry. While other local cities like LA, Anaheim, and Pasadena were able to cultivate a unique artistic identity, Riverside opted to lean more into the industrial, like factories and warehouses. They essentially chose industry over artistry. You can still see the effect of this today when driving through the area. Amazon's one of the largest employers. The rise of LA was also particularly rough on Riverside. It was kind of bullied into becoming a commuter city for LA and Orange County. All of this led to the local business district declining during the mall era, local press shrinking, and UC Riverside becoming outshined by UCLA and USC. It took Riverside until the 1980s to start formally recovering from this economic downturn. Simply, it was nightmarish for the once great city. But like I said before, it's not all doom and gloom for Riverside. It has made some very promising strides in the recent decades. For one, downtown has done a complete 180 from how it was in the 70s and early 80s. In 2023 alone, Riverside issued over 3,500 new business licenses, which has outpaced peer cities by 75%. It has also processed over 6,000 building permits valued at over $335 million. This has also led to a 13% increase in total employment. And while peer cities have stagnated or declined in population, Riverside has had a steady increase over the last 5 years. There's also been massive improvements to the cultural identity in Riverside. Riverside Art Museum has grown to become one of the nicest art collections in the surrounding area. Cheech Marin of the comedy duo Cheech and Chong has invested a lot into Chicano artists in the city and has his own branch in the Riverside Art Museum. The city has also invested heavily in their food culture. RCC's Culinary Arts School is one of the most respected in Southern California, and there's constantly new restaurants and food halls opening all the time. If you're into going to conventions, Anime Riverside is becoming one of the more notable conventions in the state. Riverside is no longer one of the premier cities of the country, and currently there's no reason for it to be. But it should still be respected as one of the more important cities in our country's history, especially when it pertains to the West Coast. Its popularity gave rise to the agricultural power of California and incentivized people to move out west. It operated in a communal first approach against the norms of the rest of the country and still thrived economically. It may not be at its once formal glory, but with its recent efforts, I hope it can find its way back into becoming a powerhouse. I'm Ethan Bradley, and this was the rise and fall of Riverside.